The Oscars are supposed to crown the greatest directors in film history, but some of the most influential filmmakers of all time never heard their names called. Today, we're breaking down 7 legendary directors who shaped cinema, yet were never rewarded with a Best Director Oscar. Let's get into it. Number 1. Alfred Hitchcock. Also known as the Master of Suspense, Alfred Hitchcock didn't just direct films. He designed the grammar of modern cinema: suspense, subjective camera, visual storytelling over dialogue, the manipulation of audience psychology. Nearly every contemporary filmmaker works in a language Hitchcock helped invent. And yet, despite that influence, the Academy never fully trusted him. Hitchcock was nominated 5 times for Best Director: Rebecca, Lifeboat, Spellbound, Rear Window, and Psycho, and lost every single time. The most telling moment came in 1941 when Rebecca won Best Picture. The Academy celebrated the film, but not the man who shaped it. Instead, the directing Oscar went to John Ford for The Grapes of Wrath. From the start, Hitchcock's work was treated as impressive craftsmanship rather than serious artistic achievement. Part of the problem was genre. Hitchcock specialized in suspense, thrillers, and psychological horror, categories the Academy has historically viewed as technical exercises rather than high art. His films were too tense, too entertaining, and too popular to fit the Academy's idea of prestige. Even when his work grew darker and more formally daring, as with Vertigo or Psycho, it was dismissed as sensational or vulgar. Psycho in particular shocked audiences and critics alike, but the Academy recoiled from its violence and subversion rather than rewarding its innovation. Time ultimately vindicated Hitchcock. Vertigo, once a critical disappointment, is now routinely ranked among the greatest films ever made. Today, Rear Window and Psycho are studied in film schools as masterclasses in direction. The irony is unavoidable. Hitchcock became culturally immortal precisely for the qualities the Academy refused to honor. It seems the Academy realized its blunder in 1968 as it awarded Hitchcock an honorary Oscar to attempt a quiet course correction. His famously brief acceptance, "Thank you indeed," said everything.
Thank you. Indeed.
It wasn't validation, it was an admission, decades too late, that the institution had failed to recognize one of cinema's defining architects. I believe the lesson we can all learn from Hitchcock's story is that the Academy struggles with directors who don't just succeed within the system, but redefine it, as his numerous snubs back it up. But now we go from arguably the father of modern cinema to the perfectionist who pushed that language to its absolute limits. Number 2. Stanley Kubrick. There are arguments in Hollywood that Stanley Kubrick didn't chase relevance but created it years before anyone else understood it. His films arrived fully formed, clinically precise, and often unsettling in ways that critics, audiences, and especially the Academy weren't prepared to process in real time. Today, Kubrick's reputation is that of an untouchable genius. Yet during his lifetime, Oscar recognition was surprisingly sparse. He received only 4 Best Director nominations: Dr. Strangelove, 2001, A Space Odyssey, A Clockwork Orange, and Barry Lyndon, but he never won one. The most glaring miss came in 1969, when he didn't win Best Director for 2001, A Space Odyssey. This was a film that redefined science fiction, visual storytelling, and cinematic ambition. Unfortunately, at the time, it was treated as a technical marvel rather than a directorial triumph. That distinction haunted Kubrick's entire career. The Academy was willing to admire his craftsmanship but hesitant to reward his vision. Although the film won Best Visual Effects, it reinforced the same misunderstanding. His films were seen as technical achievements, not emotional or thematic ones worthy of top honors. Kubrick's work consistently challenged audiences rather than comforting them. Dr. Strangelove used satire to mock nuclear annihilation at the height of Cold War anxiety. A Clockwork Orange confronted viewers with moral ambiguity and brutality. Barry Lyndon, now praised for its painterly beauty, was dismissed at the time as cold and distant. Even The Shining, initially met with mixed reviews, was too abstract and psychologically disorienting for mainstream awards recognition, as it received 0 nominations. Only later did the consensus shift. Decades after their release, Kubrick's films are studied, restored, and ranked among the greatest ever made. The Academy's discomfort wasn't about quality, it was about timing. Kubrick was always a step ahead, operating on a wavelength voters hadn't yet tuned into. And now, we go from Kubrick's icy precision to a filmmaker driven by raw emotion, obsession, and restless ambition. Number 3. Paul Thomas Anderson. There are directors that slowly earned the Academy's attention, and there's Paul Thomas Anderson, who commanded it almost immediately. With Boogie Nights in 1997, he arrived as a bold new voice, kinetic, character-driven, and unapologetically ambitious. By Magnolia just 2 years later, Anderson wasn't merely promising, he was already operating at an epic emotional scale most directors never reach. And yet, that early brilliance may have sealed his fate. There Will Be Blood is widely considered one of the defining American films of the 21st century, a towering work of obsession, capitalism, and moral rot anchored by one of the greatest performances ever captured on film. Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor decisively. Anderson, however, lost Best Director to the Coen brothers for No Country for Old Men, another masterpiece, but one with a colder, more traditionally controlled Oscar profile. That loss set a pattern. Across his career, Anderson has amassed 11 Oscar nominations across directing, writing, and producing without a single win. Each time, he's been edged out by films that felt safer, clearer, or more emotionally digestible to Academy voters. His work is often intense, abrasive, structurally unconventional, or emotionally unresolved, qualities critics celebrate but awards bodies struggle to rally around. There's also the problem of consistency. Anderson never disappears, never needs a comeback narrative, and never fits the inspirational arc the Oscars love to reward. Like Glenn Close in acting, Anderson became permanently excellent, always in contention, never urgent. His films don't feel like last chances or overdue coronations. They feel inevitable. Even his later work, The Master, Phantom Thread, Licorice Pizza, continued this paradox. Each was critically revered, formally daring, and unmistakably authored, but none arrived with the sense that this is the year we must reward him. Auteur consistency, instead of building momentum, diluted it. Anderson's career shows that the Academy tends to reward moments, not movements. He also represents a body of work too coherent, too uncompromising, and too reliably great to spark panic voting. And still, on the Academy snub, we go from Anderson's sustained highs to a filmmaker who rejected coherence entirely and embraced surrealism, provocation, and defiance. Number 4. David Lynch. There's a space the Academy has never known how to enter, and that is where David Lynch occupies. He isn't just a director with a distinct style. He's America's great surrealist, a filmmaker whose work operates on dream logic, emotional vibration, and subconscious dread rather than explanation or closure. That alone made him incompatible with Oscar culture. But how is a critically acclaimed director not compatible with the Oscars? Well, the answer lies with Lynch. In the beginning, The Elephant Man made Lynch acceptable, but briefly. Its emotional clarity and classical structure earned him his first Best Director nomination, but even then, he lost to Robert Redford's Ordinary People, a cleaner, more reassuring vision of prestige drama. When Lynch drifted back toward the unsettling with Blue Velvet, the reaction turned hostile. The film was divisive, disturbing, and openly confrontational, qualities that cemented its legacy but poisoned its awards prospects. Mulholland Drive should have been the turning point. It's now routinely cited as one of the greatest films of the 21st century, a haunting meditation on identity, desire, and illusion. Lynch was nominated for Best Director but lost again, this time to Ron Howard's A Beautiful Mind. The contrast was stark. Ambiguity versus explanation, unease versus uplift. That contrast defines Lynch's Oscar history. His films refuse to explain themselves. They ask viewers to feel first, understand later, if at all. The Academy, by design, favors narratives that can be summarized, justified, and rewarded with confidence. Lynch offers none of that. He offers mystery. But Lynch found validation from Europe. Cannes embraced him as a serious artist, most famously awarding Mulholland Drive Best Director in 2001. Critics, filmmakers, and cinephiles treated his work as essential. The Academy, by contrast, kept him at arm's length. But then, in 2019, the Academy made a turnaround and gave Lynch an honorary Oscar. Although the moment was respectful, even warm, it functioned more as containment than celebration, a way of acknowledging his importance without ever truly engaging with it. Honorary awards often serve that purpose, recognizing influence while avoiding endorsement. Lynch didn't fail the Oscars. The Oscars failed to adapt to a filmmaker whose vision couldn't be assimilated into their language. And now, from a true outsider who never bent, to a provocateur who worked inside the system and dared it to keep up. Number 5. Quentin Tarantino. If there's one director who reshaped Hollywood without ever being fully embraced by it, it's Quentin Tarantino. His influence is undeniable, his voice unmistakable, yet the Academy has consistently treated his directing as excess rather than craft, as indulgence instead of authorship. From Pulp Fiction onward, Tarantino didn't just revive genres, he rewired them. Crime films became talkative, violence became operatic, dialogue carried as much weight as plot. The film detonated culture in 1994, and still, Best Director went to Robert Zemeckis for Forrest Gump, a technically polished, emotionally reassuring artifact of consensus taste. Tarantino won for screenplay, a pattern that would repeat. That pattern became the Academy's workaround. Reward the writing, sidestep the direction. Inglourious Bastards was a formal flex. It had a chaptered structure, weaponized tension, and history, which was then rewritten as cinematic revenge. It lost Best Director to Catherine Bigelow's The Hurt Locker, a film aligned with seriousness, urgency, and moral gravity. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood met a similar fate. Its loose structure, nostalgic drift, and meta-reckoning with Hollywood myth made it culturally resonant but awards awkward. Again, Tarantino won nothing for direction. The truth is, the issue was never quality, it was tone. Tarantino's films wear their influences loudly. He quotes cinema, remixes it, and revels in excess. For the Academy, homage often reads as derivation and violence as provocation rather than intention. His movies feel playful even when they're formally rigorous. That playfulness has long been mistaken for lack of seriousness. Ironically, the Academy has repeatedly rewarded directors influenced by like Tarantino, filmmakers who borrowed his rhythms, his irony, his genre literacy, while treating the source as too loud, too messy, and too much. Authorship also became his liability. Tarantino is so visibly present in his films that voters struggle to separate style from substance, as if the two aren't inseparable. His control of tone, performance, pacing, and structure, core elements of directing, gets reframed as personality. This proves that Tarantino didn't lose because he lacked refinement. He lost because he redefined what a refinement could look like. And knowing the Academy, they just might have an honorary Oscar ready for him already. But on a serious note, we now go from the pop provocateur himself to the industrial titan who mastered the system itself. Number 6. Ridley Scott. Even as one of the most influential directors in modern cinema, Ridley Scott's relationship with the Academy has always been marked by distance. Yes, his films shape genres, redefine visual language, and outlast their competition, but they rarely fit the Academy's narrow idea of what personal direction looks like. Scott's impact is foundational. Alien didn't just launch a franchise, it redefined cinematic horror through atmosphere, pacing, and production design. Blade Runner reshaped science fiction entirely, building a visual future so persuasive it became the default template for dystopia. Gladiator revived the historical epic and won Best Picture. And still, Scott himself walked away empty-handed. He has been nominated 3 times for Best Director: Thelma and Louise, Gladiator, and Black Hawk Down, each time losing to films with clearer emotional framing or perceived auteur intimacy. In each case, Scott's mastery was treated as technical rather than expressive, as if scale disqualified sincerity. That misreading has followed him his entire career. Scott's direction is often described as visual in a way that implies distance, as though atmosphere, composition, and world building are substitutes for emotion rather than vehicles for it. Critics say Blade Runner is a meditation on mortality. Alien is about bodily violation and fear. Thelma and Louise is a radical character study disguised as a road movie. Voters think otherwise. The intimacy is there. It's simply embedded in form rather than dialogue. His preferred genres have also worked against him. Science fiction, action, and historical epics are perennial Oscar liabilities unless framed as overtly moral or inspirational. Scott's films resist that framing. They are morally ambiguous, tonally severe, and often pessimistic. They don't reassure, they immerse. Longevity hasn't helped either. Scott has been prolific for decades, denying the Academy a clean moment. There was no overdue narrative, no final act coronation, just consistency. Arguably the least rewardable trait in Oscar culture, which we have made clear in multiple videos. Scott's career reveals a recurring blind spot. When direction is invisible because it's total, it's mistaken for emptiness. Scott can be said to be a misunderstood veteran whose vision shaped cinema, but our next filmmaker is one whose voice was never allowed to be mistaken for anything but confrontation. Number 7. Spike Lee. As one of the architects of modern American cultural consciousness, Spike Lee is not merely an important American director. He is one of the few filmmakers to have shaped how the country sees itself on screen as directly, angrily, and honestly. And few have been so consistently rejected for doing exactly that. The Wound came early. Do the Right Thing, 1989, premiered at Cannes, earned Roger Ebert's rare 4-star review, and immediately became the most talked about American film of the year. Lee received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Director. The film was a critical and cultural event. Then the Oscar nominations arrived, and Lee was shut out of both Best Director and Best Picture. Instead, the Academy crowned Driving Miss Daisy, a film that approached race as reassurance rather than confrontation. Where Lee demanded reckoning, Miss Daisy offered comfort. Where Lee refused moral closure, the Academy chose politeness. The contrast could not have been clearer. The omission was so glaring that Kim Basinger went off script during the ceremony to publicly call out Do the Right Thing's absence from the Best Picture lineup. History has been unforgiving to that choice. Do the Right Thing is now canon, taught, debated, and endlessly referenced. Its Oscar victors have faded into artifacts of taste, not touchstones of cinema. The injustice compounded with Malcolm X, 1992, monumental in scope and ambition, the film received no Best Picture or Best Director nomination. Denzel Washington's towering performance also lost to Scent of a Woman, reinforcing the same pattern, safer narratives over sharper truth. What followed was a 30-year silence. Decades of influence, innovation, and relevance passed with near-total Academy invisibility. Documentary nominations arrived, but narrative acknowledgement did not. In 2016, Lee received an honorary Oscar, widely interpreted as an apology. But honorary awards don't celebrate impact, they contain it. Finally, in 2019, BlacKkKlansman earned Lee a Best Director nomination, but he lost to Alfonso Cuarón. The film also lost Best Picture to Green Book. Again, history repeated itself. The reasons are structural. A historically homogeneous Academy, discomfort with unresolved racial tension, and Lee's refusal to soften his voice. He never played the game, and the game never forgave him. The truth is, these directors weren't overlooked because they lacked craft, discipline, or vision. They were overlooked because their work didn't fit the Academy's idea of what authority should look like. Across all, the pattern is unmistakable, from genre bias masquerading as taste to suspicion, towards strong authorship, political timing, or narrative fatigue, to even unease with directors who exert too much control over meaning. Best Director is not a merit award. It's a temperature check, a reflection of what the industry feels safe celebrating in a given year. Films that challenge power, comfort, or consensus are often treated as unrewardable, no matter how influential they become. So the question isn't who should have won, it's who still matters. If there are other directors you think belong on this list, let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, like and subscribe for more film analysis and the stories awards don't tell.